They called it Operation Citadel. It became the largest graveyard of steel in human history. 6,000 tanks, one field. At Prokhorovka, metal didn't just break, it melted. This was the last time the Reich held the initiative. The moment they realized the tide had turned forever, the Soviet counteroffensive didn't just push back, it shattered the German spirit. After Kursk, the Nazi wheel of war only turned in one direction, back to Berlin. Prokhorovka, a name etched in blood and iron, thousands of tanks clashing in the largest armored engagement in human history. Hitler's gamble had failed. The German war machine, once unstoppable, now stood paralyzed in the scorched earth of the Soviet heartland. The tide didn't just turn, it broke. The Red Army, a steel tide of vengeance, launched a counteroffensive that would not stop until Berlin. Kursk was the final initiative the Reich would ever hold. From this moment on, the German army was a beast in retreat. After Kursk, the wheel of war only turned in one direction. The path to the end had begun. Prokhorovka, a steel graveyard where thousands of monsters collided in the greatest tank duel in human history. The German spearhead didn't just blunt, it shattered. This was the exact moment Hitler lost the initiative forever. Then came the Red Storm. Not a mere defense, but a tidal wave that would not stop until it reached the gates of Berlin. After Kursk, the wheel of war only turned in one direction. The Third Reich was now on a one-way road to total ruin. The myth of invincibility was buried in the black soil of Kursk. The sun was setting on the Reich, and it would never rise again. Prokhorovka, where the earth itself screamed under the weight of 5,000 tanks. The dream of the East died here. For the first time, the Wehrmacht felt the cold grip of inevitable defeat. The sleeping giant didn't just wake up. It unleashed a storm that would not stop until Berlin. After Kursk, the wheels of the Nazi war machine only turned in one direction, west. The tide had turned. The road to the Reich was now open, paved with the iron of the fallen. The ground itself trembled as 700 steel beasts collided in the fields of Prokhorovka. It was no longer a battle. It was a slaughterhouse of iron. In the suffocating heat of the turret, they felt the shift. The German juggernaut had finally hit an immovable wall. The gamble had failed. Then, the red steamroller began to move. The hunters had become the prey. The Soviet counteroffensive didn't just push, it shattered everything in its path. The initiative, Hitler's only hope, was gone. Lost in the scorched earth of Russia. The tides had turned, and there was no turning back. After Kursk, the wheel of war only turned in one direction, and that path led straight to the heart of Berlin. Prokhorovka, a graveyard of steel where the earth itself screamed under the weight of 5,000 tanks. For the first time, the Wehrmacht felt the floor give way. The initiative wasn't just lost, it was shattered. The Red Army didn't just stop the blow, they unleashed a tide that would not be held back until the heart of Berlin. The myth of German invincibility died in the dust of Kursk. The hunters had finally become the hunted. After Kursk, the wheels of war turned in only one direction, westward, toward the end. Steel screams, and the earth trembles. This is Prokhorovka, the graveyard of the Panzer legends. For the last time, the Reich held the initiative, and in this smoke, they watched it burn away. The Red Bear doesn't just push back, it consumes. The counteroffensive has begun. The momentum has shifted. The German machine no longer has a reverse gear, only a downward spiral. After Kursk, the wheel of war only turned in one direction, towards Berlin. Prokhorovka became a graveyard of iron. In this mechanical hell, hundreds of tanks collided in a desperate, fiery embrace. Operation Citadel had failed. The German war machine, once invincible, had finally run out of steam in the Russian dust. Then came the counter-strike. Operation Kutuzov unleashed a red tide that the shattered German lines could no longer hope to restrain. The strategic initiative had shifted forever. The Wehrmacht would never again hold the power to dictate the rhythm of the war. After Kursk, the wheel of war only turned in one direction. The road to Berlin was open, and there was no turning back. Prokhorovka, a name forged in iron and baptized in the blood of 2,000 titans. This was the climax, the largest clash of armored steel the world had ever witnessed, or would ever see again. For the last time, the Wehrmacht held the initiative, and for the last time, they watched it slip through their fingers. The Red Army didn't just stop the machine, they broke it. The counteroffensive began like a tidal wave of vengeance. After Kursk, the momentum was gone forever. From this moment on, the wheels of war turned only in one direction: Berlin. Prokhorovka became a graveyard of steel, where the Reich's last hope turned into a pillar of ash. This was the final moment Germany held the initiative. The great gamble of the Third Reich had reached its dead end. The Red Army didn't just stop the blow, they shattered the arm that swung it. The counteroffensive had begun. From this point on, the German Wehrmacht would never again dictate the pace of the war. After Kursk, the wheels of the Great War turned in only one direction: toward Berlin. Prokhorovka, a graveyard of steel where the air itself screamed with the heat of 1,000 dying machines. The German machine ground to a halt. For the first time, the Blitzkrieg had met its immovable object. The Red Army didn't just hold the line, they forged a hammer to strike the final blow. The initiative was lost. Hitler's iron fist was not just cracked, it was shattered beyond repair. After Kursk, the wheels of war turned only in one direction: Berlin. Prokhorovka, a steel graveyard where the Reich's last hope burned in the Russian mud. Operation Citadel was dead. For the first time, the German beast was forced to crawl back, losing the initiative forever. The defensive lines held. Now the red tide rises. The hammer of the Soviet Union is ready to fall. The momentum has shifted. The wheel of war is spinning, and it only turns in one direction. After Kursk, the path was clear. The road to the heart of the Reich lay open. The hunt was on. At Prokhorovka, the earth itself screamed. Thousands of steel titans collided in the greatest mechanical slaughter in human history. For the last time, the Third Reich held the initiative, and for the last time, they watched their ambitions turn to ash. The Red Army didn't just stop the blow, they shattered the arm that swung it, launching a counteroffensive that would never stop. After Kursk, the momentum shifted forever. The gears of the German war machine were no longer turning forward. From this moment on, the wheel of war only turned in one direction. The road to Berlin was open, and it was paved with the ruins of the East. The plains of Prokhorovka became a graveyard of iron. Two titans locked in a death grip that would define the fate of the world. This was the final moment the Reich held the initiative. The gamble of Operation Citadel was crumbling into the mud. But the Red Army didn't just stop the blow. They lunged back with a fury that shook the very foundations of the Eastern Front. The momentum had shifted. The tide wasn't just turning, it was becoming a tidal wave that couldn't be stopped. After Kursk, the wheels of war turned in only one direction, toward the heart of the Reich. The road to Berlin was officially open. Prokhorovka, a hellscape where metals screamed and the ground itself bled oil. In this moment, the Third Reich felt the first cold breath of its inevitable end. The gamble was over. The Red Giant didn't just stand its ground, it roared. The counteroffensive was no longer a plan, it was a tidal wave. Strategic initiative, once a German pride, was buried in the Russian mud. There would be no more grand offensives. Kursk was the ultimate tipping point. After this, the wheel of war turned in only one direction: west, Prokhorovka. a hellscape where steel met steel and thousands perished in a single deafening heartbeat. This was the Reich's final gamble. As the smoke cleared, the realization of a catastrophic end began to set in. The Soviet counterstrike didn't just reclaim land, it shattered the spine of the Wehrmacht forever. The hunters had become the hunted. The initiative once held by Berlin vanished into the Russian steppe. After Kursk, the wheels of war only turned in one direction. The road to Berlin was now wide open, Prokhorovka. The largest tank clash in history, steel ground against steel until the very sky turned black with oil and ash. For the Reich, this was the final gamble, but the iron wall of the Red Army refused to crack. The tide didn't just turn, it surged. The Soviet counteroffensive had begun, fueled by the wreckage of Hitler's elite divisions. The hunters had become the prey. The myth of German invincibility was buried in the mud of Kursk. After Kursk, the wheels of war turned only in one direction. The long, bloody road to Berlin had opened. After the fires of Kursk, the German machine was broken. From this moment on, the wheel of war turned in only one direction, Berlin.